he started to think, well, you know, what is being lumped into this category? Well, direct traffic is anything that's recorded without a referrer attached to it. So back in the old days, in the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s, everything was attached to a link. We could see all the links that were referring traffic to our site. We could discover backlinks, we could see who was our best advocate, you could figure out where everything was coming from. But then, as the web blew up and with the rise of mobile, that got a lot more difficult. And so you have direct traffic, which is just the URL. And you've got keyword not provided now in Google with that dark search, and you can't figure out what keywords are getting to your site with the same kind of depth that you used to be able to get to. You've got all of these buckets of things that are referring, whether it's MailChimp campaigns or social, or you've got a few different URLs that show Twitter, but which Twitter link was really shared to get back to your site? A whole lot of confusing data. So dark social focuses on that specific referral that is not attached to one of those URLs that you see in your analytics. So moving on, probably wondering, well, why? Oh, thank you. Why do I need to care about this? And the interesting thing is, over the last few years, we've learned that as much as 70% of your traffic could be misappropriated to the wrong channel. And that's because sharing isn't just taking place on social networks, it's taking place in a lot of other ways in a more one-to-one fashion. So 70% is a lot of traffic. When you think about how much of your traffic you might think is coming from a robust channel like Twitter or Pinstagram or Pinterest or Facebook. It's early, I've had like 6 cups of coffee. But 70% is a lot of traffic that you could be using for a variety of reasons. For example, a brand wants to work with you and they see you only have 1,000 followers. That might not seem like a lot, but when you can say, but I've got 1,000 right followers, these are the 1,000 followers who are activating, they're sending people to my site, they're activating their networks, and I've got the data to back it up, it becomes a far more compelling argument. So what is dark social? So we have it in a few different buckets. And it's changed a little bit over time because it used to be we didn't have to worry about mobile until fairly recently. Mobile was an evolving medium, and now it's a huge part of this. And so we've got a few different buckets, and the first is those native mobile apps. And a lot of people, when they click on a link in Facebook, it opens up in Facebook's browser now on their mobile device. But that's a non-referrer, so it's not going to show up under your Facebook traffic in your analytics. They don't attach a referral tag to it in their native browsers. A similar one would be Instagram. You tweet out something, your photo. Instagram no longer shows that native photo in Twitter when you share it right from the app, but maybe somebody sees it on their mobile device and they click through to the link. That's a referral from Instagram that's not being tracked in that mobile native browser. So all of those little pieces fall into those devices, the little native browsers that are within mobile apps. Another one is email. And you wouldn't think a lot of people necessarily share via email, but this is increasingly popular, especially among the ages of 32 on up. A lot of them share via email. They'll find a link and they copy and paste it. I do it all the time with my sister. You know, I'm not a mom, she is. And I see things all around and I'm like, oh, Natalie would love that. And I just like grab like 3 or 4 links and I'll send them to her an email of all the different things that I think she might be interested in. And that's an example of dark social. The next one would be chat. Whether it's Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Google Hangouts, Slack, all of those are non-referral traffic. So you happen to be, scrolling through your Facebook feed, you click on a BuzzFeed article, you want to share it with your significant other, you go up to the URL, you copy paste, send it in a Google Hangout. I do that 5 or 6 times a day, BuzzFeed, but with other things, to my significant other. He's at work and we share a similar profession, so we're constantly sharing information back and forth. When you think about that 5 or 6 links a day, times hundreds of thousands of people, it's a pretty big bucket of dark social referral traffic. And then the last one that you want to think about is secure browsing. So if you're visiting a site on an HTTPS, really secure function, and you click over to an HTTP link, that S doesn't attach a referral to it either. So that's another click that's, again, dark and falls into that direct URL bucket. And finally, we have organic search. In some browsers, and this one's a lot smaller, but in some browsers, you won't see any sort of organic search referral tag. You won't know, it won't necessarily fall into that organic search keyword not provided analytics data. So there's another bucket. So I'm going to give you a real life example, and I'm sorry the slide isn't bigger. This is as big as we could get it. This is from my blog, and you can see the direct source in Google Analytics, and a little over 1,000 hits. So this is a real life example of something that happened to me back in 2013. So I was traveling back from a conference, and I was flying Delta. I flew the first leg of my flight, landed in Memphis to take my connection, and I encountered a problem. Now I'm hearing impaired. I wear 2 hearing aids in my ears. And while I can hear and function on a day-to-day basis in almost every situation, there are certain frequencies I cannot hear even with the help of my hearing aids. And to deal with that, especially in some situations like emergency vehicle sirens that I can't hear, or alarm clocks, or someone knocking on the door, I brought my dog, he's since passed away, Jack, with me. Jack was a service animal, and he would come over when my alarm would go off and just scratch me on the shoulder and wake me up. Or if somebody was at the door, he would do a little circle pattern to let me know that someone was at the door. And Jack flew with me so often that a few of the flight attendants that I would see on a regular basis would call him his favorite SkyMiles customer, their favorite frequent flyer. You know, he was always on the plane. I think we logged close to 70-some thousand miles together. So we're in Memphis, and I'm getting ready to board, and the gate agent there tells me that I don't look disabled enough to need a service animal, and she's not going to let me board unless I pay the fee. Yeah. I was not happy about this, for a few reasons. First of all, it was embarrassing to be called out like that in front of all of these people as we're boarding the plane. I'm not particularly embarrassed of my disability. I also don't necessarily see it as an enormous disability, but I think about some of my friends who use service animals because of their PTSD as veterans and don't look disabled, or children who have hidden disabilities, and it's infuriating to me. So I was pretty frustrated on their behalf as well. And then I was frustrated because it's against the law to ask me to prove my disability, and she asked me to do that, and that's when I got kind of pissed. So I did what anybody with an online presence did, and I wrote a blog post about it. And I didn't really do anything. Now normally, because I've been working in social and digital, what I do is I write a blog post, and then I target it, and this is a side note, little bonus tip for you. One of my favorite things to do with a really epic blog post is to put it into Facebook ads and target journalists by occupation. I target every single person I want to cover this story, and I serve it up in their Facebook feed. That's right. That's your golden tip of the day. And I put it out there, and before long, CNN was calling, Huffington Post was calling. I had a whole bunch of local press here in Atlanta where I live calling, because Delta's based in Atlanta. And it's interesting because I didn't put any paid media behind it. I knew it would catch on its own because it's a pretty hot topic. All I did was one single tweet. I sent it out to my personal Facebook page, which means I don't have anybody like in my personal circle that would be media or that influential. They're just all friends and family. And a couple travel bloggers picked it up, came out on Reddit, and all the media was calling about it. And before I knew it, I started seeing all this direct traffic coming in on one of the posts. And it ended up going pretty viral. I think I ended up having like well over 1 million hits to that article in the first couple of weeks that it was out. It was pretty crazy. But in direct traffic, it implies that everybody typed this long URL to get there. And I know that nobody went in and typed AnnaliseKaler.com/2013/Delta told, nobody types that. So where did all that traffic come from? Well, because I tag, and we're going to get to this, my posts, I knew exactly where the traffic was coming from on Facebook. I knew exactly where it was going on Twitter. I knew exactly who was coming into my site from Reddit. I knew exactly who was clicking through from CNN. I knew exactly where it was going. But this is a good example of all the traffic I couldn't account for that I knew wasn't related to any link or any sharing. So this was an example of where people were sharing it through email, text, app, chat, wherever it might be, to tell people about the story. So when you start thinking about like, wow, 1,200 and some people that I can't account for on this one particular day, that's a pretty big number that you want to know about. And if you think about that aggregating over the course of the month or even the course of the life of your blog, that's a significant impact. So let me do this one. So I'm going to take a look at how it might apply to you as publishers. And this is an example. It's a little bit older, but it still illustrates the point fairly well. This is an example from Laughing Squid. It's one of those clickbait sites, so they always have all sorts of general interest. things happening. So I posted this link in my Facebook page, and when you click through, it just goes to the URL. It's fine. When I take the link from my RSS reader and click on it, it just goes to the same URL, which isn't exactly a problem, but those aren't necessarily going to pass referral data depending on where it's clicked. So on the next slide. On this example for Marketing Land, when I click their post on Facebook, they can see exactly where it's going because of these little tags over here. If you can kind of squint, you can see that the UTM source is Facebook. And UTM, I think it stands for like urgent tag, something or other, I forget, because it's not used as much in the long. But it's tagged, so Marketing Land knows that I came from that specific Facebook post. That's where this visit came from. If you click over to the next slide, the same thing in my RSS feed, when I click over to that exact same article, Marketing Land can see that I came through their feed, their RSS feed. So they can record 2 separate visits by the same person through 2 different mediums. So when they're taking a look at their traffic, they can see exactly where their audience is coming from. And it's pretty surprising when you start to see what channels your audience lives on or what channels are most active. Because Facebook likes, let's face it, a Facebook like on a post is not that dissimilar from walking past a magazine cover at the grocery store and reading it and then checking out and being gone for the day. It's a glimpse. A comment and share is worth a little bit more, but not that much in the grand scheme of where you're seeing most of your engagement. Ideally, you want your people back on your site and activating on your blog where they're commenting, where they're sharing, where they're being on a property you own and control. And this is one step to getting closer to understanding who those people are. So if we go into the next example. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you measure this and where you see it. And again, I'm going to put these up on SlideShare and I'll put it on Twitter or something so you can see the actual blown up screenshots. But when we get to actually doing this, it's real simple. There's a tool called Google URL Builder. It's easy. This is great. How many people use Google Analytics? I'm guessing most, yeah. So it's great. Love it. And this integrates with your analytics, which is what I love about it. A lot of the social sharing platforms like Buffer or Social Flow, Sprout Social, some of those others that people use have some of this tagging ability built in, and it's great. But I really love using Google Analytics regardless of whether or not those are built in because it seamlessly integrates with my analytics. I don't have to reconcile the data back and forth, and I can see it in one stop. I don't have to go to like 10 different spots to finally figure out where all my traffic is coming from. I can do it right inside that platform. So when you get into Google URL Builder, you're going to just enter the regular URL. Photos, I think the example here is at photos.animateskiller.com. And then it has the next level down is the campaign source. Well, Facebook, you can type Facebook, FB, whatever thing you want to use to do that. And then it'll ask you a couple of other questions. You'll see the start ones, where it's like the campaign name, you can do like CPC, is it organic? What it is, you can add all these parameters to it. And then how I put it into practical use is that when you've written your blog post or you've written your piece and you're getting ready to share it, I keep a wonderful Google spreadsheet on my, my cloud that I can refer to everything. You just make a simple URL for every single channel you're sharing on. So one for Facebook, one for Twitter, one for Pinterest, one for Instagram, wherever you plan on sharing it. And you can keep everything the same, you just want to change that little piece on the medium. Where are you sharing it? And that's where you put your differentiators, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, what have you. So then, when someone clicks through on your site, and you go into your analytics, you're going to go under acquisition and then campaigns, and it'll all be lined up nicely here. You can see like, oh, here's what Facebook traffic is coming from it. Here's all these things. Rather than just a generic Facebook landing link, you're going to get a nice breakdown of all those campaigns from every single post, nicely located in there. And then you can also take a look at like conversion rates. I mean, once you have that information, you can look at everything. If it's an email sign up, how much is that worth to you for your data and analytics? How much value are you getting from that organic traffic? Even better, if you're doing campaigns paid for by brands, and they give you a dollar amount and you want to break it down by what they paid you versus what they got. It's a great metric to showcase. If the brand puts a value at $2 on every email sign up and you're doing a sponsored campaign with them, you enter $2 into your campaign report, you got 10,000 visits, suddenly that $20,000 value, and you're delivering it for $8,000, maybe it's time to raise your prices. Sorry.
And URL shorteners will affect that.
URL shorteners will not affect it. So once you create this long, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, it's like, you know, UTM equals UTM equals UTM, you know, huge, ugly, hideous links. You can take the long link, which populates right down here, and pop it into Bitly, you can pop it in Buffer, you can put it anywhere you want, and it will not affect it.
The visual on the left, is that in Google Analytics?
The visual on the left over here is Google URL Builder.
Oh.
So it's got like 5 little boxes where you're going to enter your text. You'll hit Generate URL, and it will spit out a long URL that will go to that page, and we'll just have the text on it.
So that's good if I put that in my post, but if somebody is using like my share bar to share on Pinterest or Facebook, that's not good.
Correct, so there's a way around that. What you want to do if you're using your Facebook share buttons or anything like that, instead of linking them directly to your Facebook page, tag that. Create the URL, that's your page. So so it'd be like Facebook-UTM share, you know, UTM equals share, etc. So make a Google URL for your Facebook site that aligns with that. So you know if they shared it. I know what I'm saying, I know I'm not articulating it well. So just like any link. Yeah, so just like you would do with any link, if you're Facebook, you know, facebook.com/Annalise Kaler.
Like a Shareaholic bar, so I can customize.
Any place you can put a link, you can customize and track it. So if you're setting up your Shareaholic and it asks for your Facebook page, put your Facebook page through Google URL Builder.
It would be sharing a post.
Correct.
So I would have to go into the Shareaholic.
No. So Shareaholic, when they do a post, you know how
You can put like.
okay, sure. I'd be happy to break it down. But any place that you can put a link, like if you have a share button across your whole site, you can change those links so that if it's a general Facebook thing, you can make it so and you'll be able to say, this was general traffic that came from the share button on your site, not necessarily a share somewhere else.
Can you just tell me I can't read what that word is, so it's on the top right, acquisition.
Acquisition and then campaigns. Acquisition and then campaigns. And that's where you're going to see, because what happens, and I'm really sorry, this visual is much better when you get to see it in person, but it'll ask for like your campaign information here, and that's what it's saying, like campaign name, campaign medium, campaign, you know, any other names that you want to put with it, and then it'll spit out the URL with all of those, and because you're putting the campaign names in Google URL Builder, it'll automatically put the campaigns in the campaigns area on your Google Analytics. So it automatically puts that over.
Sorry if I'm
No, this is great. I love questions.
So, is the blog post itself one campaign, or is each sort of blog post share on Facebook is a campaign, blog post share on Twitter is each?
I make campaigns for each one.
Each one.
And the reason I do that, and it sounds really tedious, it's actually pretty fast, because if your blog post is on, you know, Delta Airlines, then all you're changing when you go back after you make the URL is instead of putting in each piece, all you're changing is one data field, which is the medium. You're just changing it from Facebook to Twitter, etc. So you just regenerate it. It really only takes maybe 60 seconds per post. It doesn't, because what happens, you don't necessarily want to see that all of the time, but it's collecting in the background for when you do. So until you go to like campaigns, and you can filter, like the beautiful thing about Google Analytics, you just search for it. Just search for your campaign name, search campaign, what have you. They've got a great search bar in the left nav where you can search for anything. So if you don't want to navigate through all of this, like I'll just put in the search bar landing page, and it brings up the 6 choices for me to go to landing page. So it sounds a lot more tedious than it is, but when you start thinking about 70% of your traffic, it's no longer a tedious exercise, it's really valuable money that you're leaving on the table. Yeah.
Do you have to put in all of the fields in order, if you skip some, it'll still work?
You can skip some and it'll still work, but it does have asterisks by the ones that you do need. So you do need to have like a medium and a name, because it needs a little bit to be able to tell you what it's calculating. So there's like 3 of them are mandatory, and they have like 8 different options. So it's a pretty cool little hack, if you will. I hate that term, it's so overused right now, but that's all I can really think of. Like, it's a really good little shortcut, and a great way to see what you're actually getting. Because what's interesting, and this is something that I found with a client of mine, they thought that they had this really great, robust Facebook audience. Well, then every algorithm changed, and suddenly edge rank that's no longer edge rank changed up again, and you've got all these different things, and they actually found where most of their dark social was coming from was Instagram, and they never even realized it. Once we started tracking it, it was like, wait a minute, most of their people are on, most of their demographic, they didn't realize was on Instagram, and in fact, that's where their biggest activators were.
So for Instagram, they're taking this custom Google URL and updating their profile URL, I'm assuming?
Updating the profile URL, yep.
Okay.
And putting it in, or they'll put it on the actual image. Like they'll take this and put it into a shortener, and it will be like bit.ly.win.
And people will type that in?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Instagram users know that they can't use links, like brands don't use links. It's just the way the platform works. So they're not opposed to it at all, especially the people who want to stay engaged with a brand or want to get involved. They'll take those steps to do that. So until that becomes available, they're totally used to that because it's the native way the platform works. Another really great tip for using this, and this is one of my favorite tips too, kind of like the Facebook press advertising one, is I use this all the time for A and B testing. So say you're on Facebook, which has the organic reach of nothing anymore, and you want to try to see what it might look like, what works better for you. And you've got all this Facebook data, like how many people clicked on your links, and how many people commented and shared, et cetera, et cetera. But what you can do here is A and B test. Take your blog post and tag it with like Facebook 1 and post it as a link share, and then the next day around the same time, try it as a photo with a URL and have that tag as Facebook 2, which is generating more traffic. Try it with different copy, try it with different images. It's just like Facebook ads, where you're never gonna nail it on the first Facebook ad. When I'm writing ads, I use 8 or 9 different images, 8 or 9 different calls to action. I launch them all, and then after about 24 hours, I turn off the 7 that aren't working, and I leave the 2 up that are driving the most traffic and revenue. So it's the same kind of thing. You can't expect like one medium to always be working. You can do this A and B test with your links, and now you've got suddenly data to compare and say, actually brand, I need 8 different images from you because I have data that backs up my point that pictures do better for me and my audience. This is what they want. This is what they interact with. Please provide that. And brand, speaking from a brand perspective, I always want to work with people who are very well aware of their data. Anybody should be able to tell me exactly where their traffic is coming from. I want to know exactly what your click-through rates are. I don't really have time to sit and listen to a pitch about the sensitivity of audiences, which I've done many times, but my audience is so passionate. I don't care. Do they click? Do they spend money? Tell me. That's what I want to know. So this arms you with more data, and I can guarantee you that anybody who walks in, I'll just assign him. Once had a blogger come to me, and we were working on an enterprise brand. It's a global brand, luxury. The average product, it was a hotel chain, so you're looking at an $800 or $900 per night, bare minimum kind of a spend. And she walked in and she didn't have any information for me. This wasn't that long ago. This was about 7 months ago, 8 months ago. And she couldn't tell me her traffic, and she couldn't tell me anything about her audience. She couldn't tell me how many people, she could tell me what clicked on Facebook, but she couldn't tell me if it brought people back to her site where the sponsored content was. She couldn't tell me how many people were actively engaged, and even more importantly, she could give me like her average impressions across the source a month. So if you're working with brands or you want to work with brands, I can tell you right now that anybody who shows up ready to tell me everything about their site that they can do without giving me all the secret sauce, they're going to get that job far faster than anybody who doesn't. Because I want to know that you're working with me as a marketer and as a brand ambassador, not as a shill for a blog. So that's my mini side rants, I guess, on this, and why this is important. So when you're thinking about your URL building, start thinking about how you want to do that with your conventions. So once you start going through this, you want to kind of keep your conventions the same, so your data and Google Analytics is looking really nice and clean and pretty, and you don't have a lot of stuff to search through. So what I usually do, like I said, I have the source, FB for Facebook, TW for Twitter, something short. You don't want a huge, long URL. It's already going to be long. And the other thing with that is know that most people just copy and paste links. 70% actually will share in dark social by copying and pasting a link. And why that's important is because if they're copying and pasting your long URL that tags a Facebook post, and they're sending it in an email to their sister, you don't necessarily need to know that it came through email, but you needed to know that it originated from Facebook. So that's why it's important to have all that clean data. Then if you can say like, well, the metrics don't quite line up, but I know it originated from Facebook. I know I have a more active presence there than I thought I did. So on. Can we go to the next slide? So I'm going to leave this up because this is kind of the last one. And this is for different reading, and I'm going to kind of get into a little bit more about kind of the history or what kind of things you should know about dark social before you get in. And the first is, like I said, it started in 2012. And since then, there have been numerous studies, a lot of different pieces of information coming through about it. It's also filtered into search. So we've got dark search as well, with like the keyword not provided, and Google withholding some of that data for the advertisers, which is fine. We just, as marketers, have to figure out a way around it, or a way to live with it and still use it to inform us. And so some of the examples you might see, or when you go through and you read this, the first one, Radium Dark Social, is one of the more recent case studies. You can download the PDF, that's where it takes you. And it's going to walk you through like a bunch of different stats, but it's going to talk to you a little bit more about why it's important. And I think you can take the bits and pieces of it and apply it to your own brand. The next one is the original post by Alexis Madrigal about dark social and what they found on The Atlantic. And I believe there's also a link to the new update, which was released about a year and a half ago on The Atlantic, and what happened after they started tagging their traffic and watching where it went. And then the final one is a piece on Marketing Land by a friend of mine, Danny Sullivan. He runs Search Engine Land as well, and he kind of coined, if you will, the dark Google, I guess is the name of the dark search, which is how you can kind of monitor where your traffic is coming from for search. So that's kind of an extended one. Kelly said, give them homework. They love homework, so that's homework. So you start thinking about why these things are important for your brand, what kind of things brands want to see, how can this inform you? And one of the reasons I cannot stress enough is that as mobile becomes bigger, we have to become more inventive, more nimble, more quick to adjust, because everything is starting to live within its own ecosphere. Think about search. When you Google something and you have the Google answers from the Knowledge Graph pop up, you don't even have to leave the search bar anymore to get the answer to a question. It's the same thing with Facebook and their own browser. I have it turned off because I hate their browser. But not every user will do that. If they're not in the tech world and they don't think about those things, your average reader is not going to turn off their Facebook browser when they go to your site. So you want to know that they came from Facebook. You want to know that they came from Twitter. You want to know where your audience is, and it's especially important when you start thinking about retargeting. Where are they coming from? You want to make sure that when they're coming to your site from Twitter, if you're retargeting them through another ad or another messaging, that you're serving up the right ad for that audience.
Okay, I have a question.